The last UFC Apex card before Fight Island goes down tomorrow night with the tremendous main event in the loaded 155-pound division. And with that, welcome to the UFC on ESPN 12 preview show here on MMAfighting.com. I am Mike Heck, being joined by Jose Youngs. And Jose, Dustin Poirier returns to action for the first time since his loss to Khabib Nurmagomedov in that title unification bout in September. Gets a surging contender in Dan Hooker, who has looked fantastic since that brutal loss to Edson Barboza. When you talk about great matchmaking and just a terrific main event, this one checks off all the boxes, does it not?
I mean, I've described this fight as it's one of those fights that I don't care what the stakes are. I don't care how many people are watching. This is a violent, high-level chess match. And I could say that for anybody in the top 10, top 5 at 155 pounds. To say this... To say I'm excited for this main event would be an understatement. I do think this is the best main event we've had at the UFC Apex in terms of competitiveness, because to me this is truly a 50-50 fight in the most stacked division the UFC has ever seen.
I know, and you mentioned the stakes when you were just speaking there, but I know we kind of narrowed that all out and talked all about it on Between the Links, but thinking about it now, you would have to imagine that whoever is able to come out on top tomorrow night, Hooker seems to have a lot of options, Poirier has a few as well, but you'd have to think that whoever wins tomorrow night, a date with that wild man Tony Ferguson seems the most likely, isn't it?
It does seem the most likely, but I'm still under the frame of mind that Tony Ferguson should probably take the rest of 2020 off. He went through a long fight camp, pretty much when did they announce his original fight against Khabib? That was back in November or December, and then the fight was in April, and then it gets pushed back, and then Khabib pulls out, and then he has to rework his whole fight camp for Justin Gaethje, and he took it was a war, and the referee stepped in and saved him. So I still think Tony Ferguson should take time off, but if he doesn't want to take time off, that is his right, and if he wants to get back in there ASAP, yes, the winner of Dan Hooker, Dustin Poirier versus Dan Hooker, should be his opponent, 100%.
Yeah, but Tony Ferguson would fight tomorrow if he was offered, right?
He would have fought in 15 rounds in Jacksonville, but that's not the case.
That's true. The main event has a lot of buzz, as it should, because it's such a great fight. But the co-main event, this has probably garnered the most attention on the entire card, especially because Platinum Mike Perry is involved. He's become the biggest story of the week, no doubt about it. No coaches in his corner, no fellow fighters in his corner. He just wants his girlfriend there, and she will take on Mickey Gall. And as expected, the face-off was a good one. Mike Perry very animated. Mickey Gall doesn't flinch at all. And anytime I mention this fight, people immediately say, man, it's really interesting. I don't get any context on it. They just say it's a fascinating fight. But since people come here for that little bit of extra context, Jose, what are some of the things that stick out to you heading into tomorrow night?
In terms of the actual fighting, I just think Mike Perry has fought in more high-level competition than Mickey Gall. I think that goes without saying. Mickey Gall himself said, when did we saw his first professional fight was on that regional scene, and he calls out CM Punk, and then his second professional fight was in the UFC. So the learning curve we saw it in main events, co-main events, Madison Square Garden cards. He's had this rise that has been so in the spotlight for such a young fighter. He says he's gone through the growing pains and he's matured as both a fighter, both in and out of the octagon. But if Mike Perry had a full camp like he has in the past, when I say full camp, I mean a full team behind him, I would 100% favor Mike Perry in this fight. I just think Mike Perry might just the experience. He hits harder. I just think Mike Perry has all the tools to beat Mickey Gall outside of the grappling, but that's if Mickey Gall can take Mike Perry down and do his thing, because yes, Mickey Gall has wins, but he submitted Sage Northcutt, another fighter who's was very young in his career and wasn't the best grappler on the canvas. And who's Mickey Gall lost to? Diego Sanchez and Randy Brown. Randy Brown fight wasn't overly exciting, and Diego Sanchez has pretty much more experience than anyone in the UFC outside of just 155, 170, all those divisions he's fought at. So I'd lean Mike Perry in terms of the actual fighting in the octagon. But the fact that he's bringing just his girlfriend is a little alarming, but it's Mike Perry, so if anyone can defeat another human being with just his girlfriend in the corner, it's Mike Perry. But at the same time, he had the Jackson Wink camp behind him, and he also got submitted by Donald Cerrone. So Mike Perry is a wild card in every sense of the word. He could go out there and just destroy Mickey Gall, or he could go out there and get submitted in 30 seconds. I am not going to try and predict a Mike Perry fight, but I'd lean towards Mike Perry.
I've been really impressed with how Mickey has been approaching this fight. And for those who aren't aware, I've had a pretty good relationship with Mickey Gall over the years. When he had that call out to see a Punk on the trailer of Looking for a Fight that aired during UFC 195, Mickey gave me his very first interview, and I thought that was really cool of him. And the reason I bring that up is he's always given me the time, and he's always given me his true feelings on fights and in different situations. So when he was on What the Heck, did I expect him to just throw out flames at Mike Perry and respond to all the trash talk? I absolutely did, but that's not what we got. We got a very level-headed and focused fighter getting ready for one of the biggest opportunities of his career. And on the flip side, like you said, Mike Perry is such a wild card, and whether you put him up against Mickey Gall or even somebody in the top 10 or the top 15, it's rare that you can say, and you sort of alluded to this, oh man, Mike has no chance to win. Like, you can't say that if he fights anybody. And whether you agree with his approach to this fight or not, and think he's just completely off the wall, it seems to be working for him. And that's the beauty of the fight game. But after all of that rambling, Jose, if Mike Perry goes in there tomorrow night and loses to Mickey Gall, let's just say Mickey finds a way to take it to the ground, submits Mike Perry, that's 3 straight losses, that's 4 out of 5 that he's tasted defeat. Do you think his job's on the line tomorrow night?
I think it depends on how the fight goes. If he loses, how fast did Jeff Neal beat him? In 90 seconds, 2 minutes? Like, if it's a fight like that where Mike Perry has no offense and doesn't do anything, then yes, if the UFC decided that was that for his UFC career, I wouldn't be surprised. But if he goes out there and puts on an exciting fight like the Cowboy Oliveira fight or the Paul Felder fight, yes, he won, or even the Vicente Luque fight where he got destroyed, it was still a fun fight for the fans. It might have not have been the most technical, but the UFC needs fighters that people talk about. And what did we just say before we start talking about this fight? People are interested in this fight. People want to watch Mike Perry fight, but at the end of the day, you have to win, and you have to at least show that you belong in there. So if he goes out there and lays an egg and gets submitted, like you said, really quickly, or just gets dominated, wouldn't be surprised if he gets cut. But if he goes out there and has done what he's done before, even in losing, where yes, his face just gets obliterated, but it's still an exciting fight, and that, do you remember the main event of that card? Not many people do. But so if Mike Perry goes out there, but everyone's talking about that Mike Perry Santiago Ponzinibbio fight, the Mike Perry Vicente Luque fight. Yes, he's going to get another chance because the UFC is giving people more chances than they should have in the past. Much worse than Mike Perry.
I agree with you. I mean, just look at the numbers on the virtual media day scrums yesterday. Mike Perry's is through the roof, and everybody else is doing okay, but Mike Perry's just close to 30,000 views right now. If you look at our YouTube, if you watch the YouTube stream, I was watching it. I'm sure Casey was, and I'm sure you were. All the comments were is Mike Perry come out? When's Mike Perry coming? When's Mike Perry coming? People want to see him just talk. So he can sell a fight just by his goofiness. So yeah, I think if he goes out there and shows any sort of competitiveness, the UFC's definitely getting him a shot. But he's got to be at least competitive in there. Yeah, I'll remember that scrum for the rest of my life because I asked him.
Oh yeah, didn't he call you a loser or something like that?
He told me to go. I'll be happy to tell you to go F yourself and that you're a loser, but only if you feel like you're a loser. If you don't feel like a loser, then that doesn't pertain to you. So very interesting.
Mike Perry tends to have disfavorable comments aimed at people from New England. Checks out.
There you go. And what I love about this fight so much is that we think we know how it's going to play out. We think Mike Perry's going to go in there and try to rake Mickey Gall's head off, and Mickey's going to want to take it to the ground. And we could see something completely different than that. And that's why that fight sticks out in a lot of people's eyes. Rest of the main card, Maurice Green versus John Vellante. At heavyweight, Brendan Allen taking on the undefeated newcomer and Kyle Dawkins. Tanner Boser versus Philippe Lins will be a lot of fun. And then Sean Woodson finally gets his second UFC fight, and he has a brand new opponent in the returning Julian Erosa. There's a lot of debuts on this card too, Jose, with Kay Hansen. We get Jinyu Fry. Jason Witt takes his fight on 48 hours notice. But You know where I'm going with this. Under the radar fights tomorrow night. What fight sticks out to you as a potential show stealer?
I'm sure everyone's going to say Luis Pena and Cameron Worthy, which I love that fight. I always love watching Violent Bob Ross fight. And Cameron Worthy, his debut I was at, and that was absolutely unbelievable. He took that fight at super short notice and just tore through his opponent. And he's like he was basically hurt from his last fight because when he fight like 7 days before that. His What the Heck interview really won me over too. He's a very well-spoken individual. Our own Alex Savas, who was clipping that, was like, I think Cameron Worthy might be my favorite fighter now just because of what he had to say. So I think everyone's going to say that. But you know me, I love fighters with weird hobbies. I absolutely love fighters that are just so outside the box in terms of what people think fighting is. So I got to go with the crochet boss, Maurice Green. I interviewed him. I think it was UFC 246 wasn't his last fight in January or December or January, I should say, the Conor McGregor fight. That's one of my favorite interviews. Not a lot of people watched it because obviously it was the Conor McGregor show, but the way he spoke and the way he just had such an affinity for crocheting, and he like plugged his Etsy shop, and he's just like, my goal in this fight game is to make crocheting cool again. And I was like, I like that. Like, man has standards. So 100%, I'm excited for Maurice Green. Gian Villante making his debut at heavyweight. Like, jumping up to heavyweight. Like, I'm excited for that too. So, might not be the most technical fight, but Maurice Green, I'm always down to see big heavyweights with a high level submission skill. So, Maurice Green, Gian Villante is the one I'm most excited for outside of the main event.
That's a fun fight. I'm kind of surprised you said that one, but it's all right. Pena versus Worthy, I thought you were going to go with, but I know you were going to think even more outside. But I'm going to go even more outside, all right? I'm going to the opening fight of the night. Mm-hmm. Jordan Griffin versus Yusuf Salal. These two guys and their styles, the constant movement they bring to the table. Plus Jordan Griffin, which is crazy, and no one's going to talk about this really, he made weight twice in 2 weeks, which is nuts. Good on him. But my advice to all of you watching this right now is watch this card from the very beginning so you don't miss that fight because it's going to be a barn burner. Trust me on that. Also, Takashi Sato versus Jason Witt. This is going to be a lot of fun as well. And if you followed Jason Witt's career, this guy fighting on super short notice, a week, couple days, not uncommon for him whatsoever. He comes in with 4 straight wins, 8 out of his last 9 or something like that, taking on Takashi Sato, who is like 12 finishes in his career, and most of them are in the first round. So that's going to be a lot of fun for sure. This is a really good card on paper. There's a lot of fights that are being overlooked because there's not a lot of familiarity here. But for the hardcore MMA fans, this is a pretty solid card. I'm giving it, like, at least on paper right now, I'll give it a solid B. Yeah,
it's what a fight night is. This is a good fight night card. They've put an insane main event, so people are going to tune in for the main event. And all of these debuts, these debutantes, and people fighting for their careers and everything, like, this is the type of fight you need at the top, and then everyone below them will get the shine. So this is what a fight night should be on paper, and I think the UFC did a good job building this card.
And if you guys didn't know, because we lost a fight, maybe 2 overall, it is no longer 5 p.m. Eastern start time for the prelims. Now 6 p.m. and then the main card 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on ESPN and ESPN Plus. So another early-ish start time, which I'm happy with. But we do have a 6-fight main card, so we could be up burning the midnight oil, as people would say. But of course, we have you covered with all your fight night coverage tomorrow night, recaps, news, etc. on MMAfighting.com. Plus, we'll have the post-fight show with all of you. And I'm really looking forward to this one. Then we get a weekend off from UFC action, and then we are off and running with 3 events in 8 days on Fight Island. So that's going to be something to behold as well. Lots of great cards. UFC 251 is ridiculous. I can't wait to preview that in a couple weeks. But with that said, for Jose Youngs, I am Mike Heck. Thank you for watching and listening, and we will see you tomorrow night.
Because you didn't ask, I'm picking Dustin Poirier to beat Dan Hooker.
Oh, well, there you go.